Good. So it says that we are streaming service right now. Where is it going?
Well, it's in, oh, now it's live on Facebook. So just refresh it. It should be there. Yeah, I think we're there now. Okay. So we think we're back and we think we're live. If you see us and hear us on Facebook, could you just let us know? This new system, which makes it better for us to be with you, is a little more technically complicated, as you might see or intuit. So we're just going to keep going with the assumption that this is working unless we hear otherwise.
We've got the Evans and we've got my parents and we have Dan Rosowski and it looks
Perfect.
like Cohen's all the way from Skokie are joining us as we come into Shabbat together.
Perfect.
As we reset, you are live, Deborah tells us. Thank you for that affirmation, Deborah. I'm sure that you're with Gabe and Dave. And Marilyn, we see you too as you post a comment and you're here with us. As we move into this new sanctuary space, let's all just take a deep breath. As we greet and welcome Shabbat with prayers and with song, you can access our prayer packet and our text sheet that we'll use for our Torah discussion on our website at Better Together tab. We also posted it in the last Facebook post. You can go there and access that as well. It should be pinned there in the comments. Let's read together on page 1 of that packet the words of Ahava Rabbah. Please join us. We are loved by an unending love. We are embraced by arms that find us even when we are hidden from ourselves. We are touched by fingers that soothe us even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us even when we are too embittered to hear. We are loved by an unending love. We are supported by hands that uplift us even in the midst of a fall. We are urged on by eyes that meet us even when we are too weak for meeting. We are loved by an unending love, embraced, touched, soothed, and counseled. Ours are the arms, the fingers, the voices. Ours are the hands, the eyes, and the smiles. We are loved by an unending love. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
That idea of an unending love, an eternal presence that connects us through all space and time is affirmed when we sing Shema together. Our notion, our really core notion of the unity of all things contained in that source of all life we call God. So please take another deep breath and feel free to join us in Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Vaed. We'll continue with Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam ve'shivtecha b'veitecha u'vlechtecha v'aderech u'v'shochbecha u'kumecha Ukshartam leot al yadecha, vehayu letotafot beinenecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Turn to words of shalom, words of blessing, our ultimate request from God on this day of Shabbat. Join us on page 3. You have called us to peace, for you are peace. Grant us the vision to realize these aims. Where there are ignorance and superstition, let there be enlightenment and knowledge. Where there are prejudice and hatred, let there be acceptance and love. Where there is fear and suspicion, let there be confidence and trust. Where there is tyranny and oppression, let there be freedom and justice. Where there are poverty and disease, let there be prosperity and health. Where there are strife and discord, let there be harmony and peace. Baruch atah Adonai, barech et amo Yisrael, bashalom. Particularly moved by that line here in our prayer, where there are poverty and disease, where there's tyranny and oppression, let there be prosperity and health. Along with our prayer for peace, we also offer this prayer of healing. We pray for all people. We pray for our friends and our family, for our neighbors and our friends, our coworkers who we haven't seen in so long. Pray for all people of our city, our country. If you're thinking of someone this morning who's in need of a special prayer for healing, in need of healing of body or healing of soul, healing of mind, I'd invite you to share their names either aloud in the privacy and the comfort of your own space, or if you're joining us on Facebook, we'd invite you to write their names in our chat. Together, we lift them with words of blessing and words of prayer. And we pray for their speedy, perhaps continued healing this day. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh hacholim. Oh God, please heal us. Amen. Transition now to my favorite part of our Saturday mornings together, our time to learn some Torah together. And so the text sheet that we're using, the prayer packet that we've posted, page 4 and 5 will have a bunch of texts. I hope we can get through them. I'm not sure we will get through all of them because there's a lot of rich discussion that might come of this. Rabbi Geffen and I are monitoring Facebook Live right now. And so we see your comments. We see the people that you're lifting up in prayer. We saw all of your posts for our healing prayer. We'll also be able to see your comments and your reactions and your questions that you post on Facebook as we go through this Torah discussion. And so don't just sit there, but pick up that prayer packet, pages 4 and 5, and offer us some reactions, some comments, and some questions. Help us in this discussion of Torah. Before we dive into the Torah text, let's offer a blessing for the study of Torah. That's on the bottom of page 3. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed is our eternal God who commands us to engage and to immerse ourselves in our incredible written tradition. Today, amen. How cool. How cool. That's great. Hey, Peggy and Sheila, I see you, and Dan, Sherry, thank you for being with us as we move into Torah together. We walk into Parashat Shalach. Growing up, I learned it as Shalach Lecha, right? Parashat Shalach. And again, another time, the people of Israel fetch and complain. you were with us last week, Cantor Goldstein and Rabbi Geffen talked about that time that the Israelites longed for the wonderful food that they imagined they had back in Egypt, which we know couldn't have been true. They were slaves. There was this longing to return to something familiar, something they knew as they marched forward all these years in the wilderness, at this point poised to enter the promised land. And we'll walk into Numbers 14. It's at the very top of page 4 of your text sheet. I'm going to read sort of a larger section of Torah this morning. I understand. Bear with me. Let's read it in English so that everybody is literally on the same page, and then we'll be able to discuss it a bit. So Numbers 14, beginning in verse 1, the whole community broke into loud cries, and the people wept the night. Of course, this was their reaction to particularly the reports of the 10 scouts who Moses sent into the land of Israel. There were 12 in total, but 10 of them came back and said, the land of Israel is dotted with these fortified cities, and the people who reside in these cities are giants. Surely we cannot move forward. This would be a disaster for us. We will fail. This land is not suited for us. And here the people respond. The whole community broke into loud cries, and the people wept the night. All the Israelites railed against Moses and Aaron. If only we had died in the land of Egypt. The whole community shouted at them, or if only we might die in this wilderness. Why is God taking us to that land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our children will be carried off. It'd be better for us to go back to Egypt, they said. Let us head back to Egypt. Torah tells us that Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembled congregation of Israel. And Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, those are the two other tribes, two other scouts of the 12, rent their clothes and exhorted the whole Israelite community. The land that we traversed and scouted is an exceedingly good land, they said. If pleased with us, God will bring us into the land, a land that flows with milk and honey, and it gives it to us. Only you must not rebel against God. Have no fear then of the people of the country, for they are our prey. Their protection has departed from them, but God is with us. Have no fear. And the whole community threatened to pelt them with stones. The presence of God appeared at the tent of meeting before all of the Israelites. What a scene. What chaos ensues after a single report by this group of scouts who Moses sent into the land of Israel to let them know what they were getting into. 10 of these scouts come back and say this land is not inhabitable. It's not worth our time. We shouldn't move forward. Caleb and Joshua have a different opinion. And I think that the question that the rabbis ask throughout tradition, and I asked this week, is what did Caleb and Joshua know that the others didn't? What was their motivation compared to the other 10? And that word fear stood out to me, hit me over the head in a different way this week and here in this time. Caleb and Joshua's message is don't fear. You know, this is something that both you and I, Rabbi Geffen, have preached about over the years, right? It's an important lesson for us. I'm wondering if you have a reaction. I see the smile on your face as we...
No, this is one of my favorite Torah portions. Not so much for the 10, but really for the 2. And I think that idea of what do the 2 see that the 10 don't, is like demonstrative probably of any group think structure, where, fear is often held by one, but then is quite contagious and spreads to many. And very few don't succumb to it, and I think in this case, Joshua and Caleb, are the 2, but we're left with the 10, which is in the Jewish context a community, right? So the community deteriorates and is literally driven backwards because of this fear frenzy that ensues. And just, I don't know that it's what Joshua and Caleb know. I think it's how they see. And what and how they see is different, even though they all saw the exact same scene.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note here that it's not just the people that cry out, but in response to the people, Moses and Aaron, the two leaders of the Israelites at this moment, Torah says, fall on their face, ala panim, that the sages say they were so overwhelmed, right? Sometimes that phrase talks about prayer, that it's Moses and Aaron asking God for assistance. The sages say, no, in this moment, they were so overwhelmed as well that they just fell on their faces, right? Still a phrase that we use. I think the power of fear, the crippling nature of it. I had a conversation this week with Irv Amato. I see that you're with us here this morning, and Irv was responding, and I agree with you, Irv, that fear, I don't want it to be my motivator, right? I don't appreciate the paralyzing nature of some fear. And I bring in this text from Rabbi Alan Liu. We talk about Rabbi Liu's teaching, particularly around the holy days, but I want to bring him in here. He talks about pachad, which is one Hebrew word for fear. And he says this pachad, this fear, refers to a projected or imagined fear, the fear of the phantom, the fear whose object is imagined. It's astounding how often such fears become the organizing principles of our lives and how much they close us off to the world. And so when you say, what did Joshua and Caleb, what did they see differently? Perhaps they didn't.
I mean, I think like that. What's interesting is, an imagined fear. It's not that they imagined it out of nowhere. These aren't ghosts in their dreams or monsters in their dreams. There are very big people who inhabit the land. And they're called Anakites for a reason. So it's, I think that's the part that is very real is, when in our lives today, when fear sort of sets in, it's not that we're all irrational and delusional. It's we've seen something and then we've constructed a narrative out of it, which enlarges it or, makes it daunting or whatever it might be. But everyone saw the Anakites. So did Joshua, so did Caleb. It's just for them, God is a bigger giant. So they're part of a bigger empire. So it doesn't matter. Whereas for the other 10, they see these Anakites and they say that it made us feel like grasshoppers. It warped what they saw of themselves and of others, but it was rooted in something real, and I think that's why, sometimes the navigation around fear is complicated, because if they were just phantoms, ghosts, then we'd be dealing in the realm of sort of, needing some kind of grounding back into reality. But they are in reality, just like Joshua and Caleb are. They just interpret reality differently. So I think it is pachad, but the phantom is rooted in something real. Lest we think that, we shouldn't just, I sometimes find it easy to vilify these 10, but we can look around at everything in our world right now and see how fear impacts how we see things as human beings, all of us, and our experiences. So just to help us have a little empathy for these 10 guys.
We say this all the time, that the greatest sermons are the ones that we have to hear ourselves, right? They're like, we very much, this for me is a response to the world, of course. Jack Weinberg says that this perhaps is God's way of teaching them that they're truly ready, perhaps truly ready. This episode is a symbol of that. The rabbis asked that question, right? So what did Caleb and Joshua do? What did they see differently that they were able to report differently? And we get this text from the Talmud, the very bottom of page 4 of your prayer packet, in which the rabbis, they create a response. They know that Numbers 13, the verses, and they went up into the south, saying all of the scouts, they plural, went up to the south, and he came to Hebron. And the question is, why in that verse would there be a plural verb in the beginning and then a singular verb in the end? And so obviously, the sages say Torah is differentiating between a group, a plurality, and then a single individual. And our rabbi says, well, that individual is Caleb, right? And so Caleb goes to Hebron. And Hebron, the hyperlink, the what should ring in our ears, is it's the burial place of the forefathers and foremothers. This is the place that connects back to our ancestry, to our heritage and tradition. And I think to your point, Rabbi Geffen, that Caleb and Joshua perhaps saw something bigger. They saw the bigger tradition. They saw the bigger heritage, the bigger narrative. And for me, I think that's powerful that the rabbi said, what they did was they returned to their tradition, they returned to their roots, and in that they saw that there was something much bigger than themselves. A powerful.
Yeah, they changed the channel.
Yep.
You know, I think about this just like in terms of being locked in our homes and how like our whole understanding of the outside world right now is subjective to what we see on screens or read in print media or whatever it is, because most of us are not really like out in the world right now. And if you spend your time all on one channel, you're going to be pretty sure that what you're seeing is real, because it's just being messaged to you over and over and over again. And here you see that Caleb changes the channel. He says, okay, so I've seen that channel. I'm going to go back to the history channel, as it were, you know, to root into something deeper, to take me out of this flash media, and help me navigate better. But I think it's that choice of, it's the choice of looking elsewhere. It's the choice of expanding the viewpoint. And I don't think most people would take that to Rabbi Mason's point. You know, can we really expect, is it fair to expect a group of former slaves to transform themselves and their self-image? You know, probably not, which is, I think, Jack's point, right? Like all of this is just to say this group of people was never going in. Maybe the whole point is to say, except for the very few who were able to rise above, right? In this case, simply two. But I do sort of think it is fair to expect that of us in our world today. You know, and it's why this story happens for the group of people who were slaves and then freed, but we don't see this, you know, unfair expectation placed upon the group born free in the wilderness. And I would just say that the expectation we should hold for ourselves, you know, we should be careful not to say, well, how can you expect me to rise above my fear? I'm just a slave. That's not true. None of us, you know, that's not us. We're the Deuteronomic generation. We're not the Exodus, Leviticus, chapter 1 through 12 of Book of Numbers generation. So, you know, that differentiation, I think, is kind of key for us and how we want to take this for ourselves.
That's great. I want to lift up a teaching. Dina Weiss of Hadar offered an incredible Devar Torah this week, in which she talks about perhaps the people weren't necessarily afraid of death, right? If they were afraid of dying, they knew they were going to either die in Egypt or on this path, right? And they say that, right? Like, why didn't we just die back in Egypt? Maybe we're going to just die here. She says it's not that fear of death, but perhaps it's that fear of failure, right? Perhaps it's that fear that they're not going to achieve, they're not going to reach that promised land as they imagined, as they envisioned, as they were told might happen. And so their giving up at that moment was more a reaction to, you know, if we're not going to reach the destination as we imagined and expect, then why do it at all? However, that's antithetical to Jewish learning and Jewish teaching, right? That we know that I have a T-shirt, a Karav T-shirt, right? Thinking about you, Isaac Friedman. And it's not so much about the destination, but the journey is crucial. And how important that is throughout our tradition, and particularly as it comes to Torah study, right? Let's go to the next page, to page 5. We get this this great midrash, and it's a response to the idea that the entire project of learning Torah is about this process and destination. The journey is crucial. Rabbi Levi said, it's like a basket with holes whose owner hired workers to fill it. The dull worker, one of these workers, what does he say? What am I gaining? It goes in this opening and it goes out that one. What does the alert worker say? Don't I get a reward for each jug? Similarly, what does the dull one say about Torah study? What have I gained in learning Torah and forgetting it? Right? And what does the alert one say? Does God pay me for my efforts here in this journey, in this process? We learn and we forget. We struggle the entire time. And isn't that the reality? Right? As Jack lifts up, perhaps this scene in our Torah portion is a test in of itself, regardless of where the destination comes, right? There's great learning and there's possibility, even in being present in that struggle.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I say the caveat even in being present. I think in being present, it's the only place we can ever really be. Yeah. There's a reason we never get to Jerusalem. There's a reason that at every Passover Seder, we always say, Bashana Haba Yerushalayim, like if everything was results oriented, it by its nature could not be everlasting. And the Jewish narrative, as frustrating as it might be for some, is constructed very creatively to create a pretty eternal narration. And I think that idea of what does it mean to affirm meaning in the present moment, rather than having some destination to come, is why it's compelling and why it's challenging. I think it's also why, Reform Judaism whitewashed it out of the tradition, but I think it is why in other constructs of Judaism, the Messiah plays such a critical role. It's not that there isn't some higher motivating endpoint, for lack of a better word, to strive for, right? That is there in that framework. But again, it's like Jerusalem. The operative understanding is, no one really knows when the Messiah is really coming. And even like the 18th century, 18th and 19th century Jewish philosophers, Herman Cohen talked about, if you're planting a tree and the Messiah comes, you have to complete the planting of the tree before you can go to greet him, because somebody's going to benefit from that tree later on, and you can't just throw everything away, even when the destination arrives. So that, that idea of what's it worth to me in the here and now, the answer is it's worth everything, because this is the only moment that matters. But if the metrics we're applying are all focused on ourselves, then we'll never be satisfied.
Yeah, right. And the way that we combat against moving our thoughts too far into that future is to remind ourselves of the present. Right? That what if the people in the wilderness, as they were hearing those 10 scouts, that fearful report said, no, I'm here with my couple 100,000 people. I have the food that I need. We're able to walk and move forward. We have the leadership in place. We can be present here now, and journey together. Let's jump to the end. All right, we'll jump to our last text. This is Rabbi Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl. This is a great Hasidic master. I like to bring in Hasidic texts when I'm studying with you, so I know it's a passion of yours.
Thanks, Rabbi Daniels.
Right, so this is a great piece. The truth is that a person cannot constantly stand on one level. One reason is that it is in order that he come afterwards to a greater level. For in everything, there needs to be absence before presence. And we want to rise up to a greater level, there needs to be an absence before then. Therefore, he needs to fall from that level that he is at now. We know that in all of our journeys, the experience isn't necessarily linear, one step at a time, rising higher and higher, moving 1 foot forward, 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 forward. There is a rise and a fall. There are times that we're going to be paralyzed in our fear, and there will be times that that fear might be motivating and constructive. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Hasidic teaching of allowing ourselves to see ourselves with empathy, with kindness, and with that same love that God offers to the people might make this journey a bit easier. Mm-hmm. Might make our world a bit more pleasant as we remain committed there. Sheila, our hope is always that the next generation will be better, and then we help pave the way for them. Right? This Jewish people, there's a continuity, understanding a greater mission. And if we don't achieve that promised land, we set it up for generations to come.
Yeah, and that if we had a little less anxiety around failing, it's interesting. Just you chose the narration of the spies is a much longer one, and there are these sort of two precipices they stand on. The first is when they're like, we're gonna die, take us back to Egypt. And then the second one is they're offered kind of an opportunity to retract or like to just stop talking. But then they double down and they're like, we're gonna die, and that's what ushers in the death sentence of the entire generation. And it's like if only they could have kind of recognized in the first precipice, oh, we panicked, we're scared we're gonna fail. Somebody could have said to them, it's okay, guys, it's worth the risk. Don't worry. We're all in this together, just eliminated some of the fear and the failure aspect. Or failure is part of the deal. If we fail, we'll figure out how to regroup. You can see how things might change. And that fear of failure, I think, is ultimately what holds all of us back all the time from taking any level, ascending, descending, whatever it might be. We stand in paralysis instead. It's a really powerful idea.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank everybody. It's so great to be able to have real conversation and for us to be able to see questions and comments as they arise. We never know exactly where this conversation will go, but it's always made better in community and with others and your input. So thank you for being with us as we march through a really rich section of Torah. Stay tuned. We'll continue this next week. Great. Let us, as we move to conclude our Shabbat experience this morning, our thoughts and our minds and our hearts turn to memory. To our loved ones who have died recently and our loved ones who have died at this season in years past. As a synagogue family, we remember all those who have died in these past 30 days, whose families mourn in a period of shloshim. Judy Berger, Ralph B. Block, Mark Vintel, Diane Fixler, Alana Grunberg, Sherwin Jack Koloff, Harold Rabin, Erwin Mark Rosenblum, Stephanie Sherman, Richard Siegel, Alexander Smolovsky. We remember our loved ones whose yahrzeit, the anniversary of their passing, is this Shabbat. Irene Abrahams, Ida Edelstein, Sylvia A. Altschuler, Louis B. Barrick, Nathan Bierman, Fanny Bergida, Eleanor Berman, Dr. Milton H. Bronstein, Bruce Colton, Beatrice Coopersmith, Aaron Dorfman, Bill Dorfman, Albert Dubrow, Anna Coates Edelstein, Jesse Eisen, Fritzie Astro Eisenberg, Isidore Eubanks, Eleanor Feld, Betty Fishman, Max Fishman, S. Lillian Evuler Friedman, Gertrude Galler, Sigmund Galler, Dora Galen, Alger D. Goldfarb, Helene L. Golub, Selig Gottheiner, David Falk Gold, Sheila Greenblatt, Henrietta Teplitsky Harris, Queenie Havers, Janet Hurwich, Bessie Frank Isaacson, Edward D. Jacobs, Ronnie Jacobs, Simon Lowell Jacobs, Harold I. Kaufman, S. Burt Krasnow, Joan Kritz, Marilyn Levine, Francis Lieberstein, Jordan H. Lippman, Robert Sheldon Lubin, Marilyn Malter, Susan Melvoin Martin, Irene Michaels, Joanne Miller, Phil Moskowitz, Menashe Ben Menachem Naib, Bernice S. Neerman Levin, Ann Newsenow, Liba Rayfel, Norman Rosowski, Ruth Ritt, Sidney L. Robin, Sandra Rosenberg, William S. Rothschild II, David Rosenzweig, George Rutke, G. David Shine, Walter Schulman, Ida Dorfman Schwartz, Sophie Silverman, William Harris Smith, Elias Sonnenthal, Larry Stone, Mandel Sweet, George Thomashow, Lester Weil, Maud Weil, Trevor D. Weiss, Natalie Wold, Nancy S. Wolf, and Mary Zuckerman. If you'd like to add the names of your loved ones to our list of names this morning, we'd invite you to share their names with us on our Facebook chat. We remember all those who we share aloud, all those names we share aloud. All of those names, our family and our friends, we hold in our hearts at this moment of remembering. And let's join together on the last page of our prayer packet for the words of Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah ve'alma divrach yiroteh v'yamlich malchuteh v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayed chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ulmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudsha brichu ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya Chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. Zichronam levracha, may all of their memories be for an abiding blessing. Let's say together.
Amen.
Some brief words of announcements and gratitude. First off, thank you again for participating with us on the Shabbat morning experience, whether you're joining us live here this morning or you're tuning in later on demand on Facebook or YouTube or our website. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom to you. We hope that you'll join us at the end of Shabbat later tonight, 7:30 on Facebook, as we welcome the Mazer Levin family, who will so graciously offer to lead us in Havdalah, that ceremony brief that marks the end of Shabbat and the beginning of a new week. Join them on Facebook Live later, 7:30, and please like us on Facebook, visit our website, check out all of the many programs and offerings coming out this week and in weeks to come. Let's sing.
Should we sing something?
Yeah.
We'll sing Oseh Shalom, best way to move into the rest of Shabbat together. Oseh Shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat shalom.